Unexpected landing. Dr. Ilara Chen gripped the shuttle's control panel, her knuckles white as the small craft shuddered violently. Warning lights flashed across the console, bathing the cockpit in an ominous red glow. Through the viewscreen, she could see the looming purple-tinged atmosphere of an uncharted planet, growing larger by the second. Come on, she muttered, fingers flying over the controls as she tried to stabilize their descent. Next to her, her research assistant, Zach, was frantically running diagnostics on the ship's systems. "It's no use, Doc," Zach shouted over the blaring alarms. "The gravitational pull is too strong. We're going down." Ilara's mind raced. This was supposed to be a routine mission, a quick jump through a newly discovered wormhole to collect data, then back to the research station. But something had gone terribly wrong during the transit, damaging their engines and navigation systems. "Brace for impact," Ilara yelled, pulling back on the controls with all her strength. The shuttle's hull groaned in protest as they entered the planet's atmosphere, friction causing the exterior to glow red-hot. With a bone-jarring crash, the shuttle plowed into the alien landscape. Ilara's head snapped forward, then back against her seat. As consciousness faded, her last thought was of the irony. A doctor, about to need serious medical attention herself. When Ilara came to, the first thing she noticed was the acrid smell of smoke and melted circuitry. She blinked, her vision swimming into focus. The cockpit was a mess of twisted metal and shattered displays. A groan from beside her reminded her she wasn't alone. "Zach," she called out, her voice hoarse. "You okay?" "Define okay," came the weak reply. Ilara turned to see her assistant, still strapped into his seat, a nasty gash across his forehead. "I think I'm in one piece, but my head feels like it's been used as a soccer ball." Ilara unclipped her harness, wincing at the pain in her ribs. "Probably bruised, if not cracked," she thought clinically. She reached for the medkit stowed under her seat, thankful it had survived the crash. "Hold still," she instructed Zach, cleaning and bandaging his head wound. "Looks worse than it is. You'll have a hell of a headache, but no signs of concussion." As she worked, Ilara's scientific mind kicked into gear, assessing their situation. The shuttle was a total loss. That much was clear. But what about the planet they'd crashed on? She glanced out the cracked view screen, getting her first real look at their new surroundings. The landscape was alien in every sense of the word. The ground was covered in a thick, spongy material that looked like a cross between moss and coral. It undulated gently, as if breathing. Towering structures that might have been plants stretched towards the lavender sky, their tendrils swaying in a non-existent breeze. "Well," Zach said, following her gaze, "I don't think we're in Kansas anymore, Doc." Ilara managed a wry smile. "No, definitely not. But we need to figure out exactly where we are, and fast. This atmosphere might be toxic to us." She rummaged through the shuttle's emergency supplies, pulling out 2 environment suits. They were designed for short exploratory missions, not long-term survival, but they'd have to do. "Suit up," she told Zach. "We need to assess the damage and see if we can salvage any communication equipment." Once sealed in their suits, Ilara and Zach made their way out of the battered shuttle. The spongy ground beneath their feet made walking difficult, each step requiring extra effort to maintain balance. "It's like walking on a giant trampoline," Zach observed, his voice tinny through the suit's comm system. Ilara nodded, her attention focused on the handheld scanner she'd brought from the shuttle. "Atmosphere is surprisingly Earth-like," she reported, eyebrows raised in surprise. "Slightly higher oxygen content. Trace amounts of unknown gases, but theoretically breathable." "Theoretically?" Zach asked nervously. "We'll keep the suits on for now," Ilara replied. "No sense in taking unnecessary risks until we know more." They circled the shuttle, assessing the damage. The news wasn't good. The communication array was completely destroyed, along with most of the ship's other systems. "So we're stuck here," Zach said, his voice flat. No way to call for help. Ilara felt a wave of guilt wash over her. As the senior researcher, the responsibility for this mission, and its failure, lay squarely on her shoulders. But she couldn't afford to dwell on that now. They needed a plan. "We're not beaten yet," she said, injecting confidence into her voice. "We've got supplies, we've got our wits, and we've got each other. First things first, we need shelter and a secure source of water." As if on cue, a low rumble of thunder echoed across the alien landscape. Ilara and Zack looked up to see ominous clouds gathering in the purple sky. "I think the planet heard you, Doc," Zack quipped. "Water incoming." The rain, when it came, was like nothing Ilara had ever seen. Instead of falling in drops, it descended in shimmering sheets, as if someone had turned the sky into a waterfall. The liquid hit their suits with a hiss, and Ilara's eyes widened in alarm as she saw small wisps of steam rising where it made contact. "Back in the shuttle. Now," she shouted, grabbing Zack's arm and pulling him towards the wreck. They stumbled across the increasingly slick ground, diving through the damaged airlock just as the full force of the storm hit. Safe inside, they watched in awe as the rain continued to fall. Wherever it touched the spongy ground, the moss-like substance seemed to come alive, changing colors and reaching upwards as if to drink in the precipitation. "Acidic," Ilara murmured, reading the data on her scanner. "Not strong enough to eat through our suits quickly, but definitely not something we want prolonged exposure to." Zack slumped against the shuttle wall. "Great. Acid rain, killer plants, and we're stuck here with no way to call home. This is turning into one hell of a field trip, Doc." Ilara understood his frustration, but they couldn't afford to give in to despair. "Look on the bright side," she said, forcing a smile. "We're the first humans to set foot on this planet. Think of all we can learn here." Zack gave her a look that clearly said he thought she was crazy, but Ilara could see a small spark of curiosity in his eyes. Good. They'd need that spirit of scientific inquiry if they were going to survive. As the acid rain continued to fall outside, Ilara began to take stock of their supplies. Food and water for a week, if they rationed carefully. Basic medical supplies. A portable lab kit for analyzing samples. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "Okay," she said, laying out their gear. "We've got two priorities. 1. Find a way to communicate with the research station or any passing ships. 2. Learn enough about this planet to survive until rescue comes." Zack nodded, some of his earlier panic fading as he focused on the tasks at hand. "The shuttle's main comm is fried, but maybe we can salvage some parts to boost the signal on our suit radios." "Good thinking," Ilara agreed. "I'll start analyzing the atmosphere and that rain. If we can figure out its composition, we might be able to neutralize the acid and have a safe water source." As they settled into their tasks, Ilara felt a familiar thrill of discovery. Yes, they were in danger. Yes, the odds were stacked against them. But they were scientists, explorers. Solving impossible problems was what they did best. Hours passed as they worked. The rain eventually stopped, revealing a landscape transformed. The moss coral ground was now a riot of colors, pulsating with life. New structures had sprouted, twisting towards the sky like abstract sculptures. Doc?" Zack called from where he was tinkering with radio components. "You might want to see this." Ilara joined him at the view screen, gasping at what she saw. In the distance, moving with surprising speed across the undulating terrain, was something. It was hard to make out details, but it appeared to be a collection of tentacles or vines, all working in unison to propel a central mass forward. "Is that alive?" Zack whispered. Ilara's mind raced with possibilities. "I think so. And if it is, it might be intelligent. This could be our first contact with an alien species." Excitement warred with caution in her chest. As a doctor and scientist, the opportunity to study an entirely new form of life was intoxicating. But she was also acutely aware of the dangers. They knew nothing about this creature or its intentions. "What do we do?" Zack asked, tension evident in his voice. Ilara took a deep breath, weighing their options: stay hidden in the shuttle and hope the creature didn't notice them, or take a risk and attempt communication. In the end, her scientific curiosity won out. "We observe," she decided, "but we stay alert and ready to retreat if necessary. This could be our best chance at survival, or our biggest threat." As the alien entity drew closer, Ilara and Zack prepared themselves for their first encounter with extraterrestrial life. Whatever happened next would change the course of human history, assuming they lived to tell the tale. The purple sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the alien landscape. In the fading light, the approaching creature seemed to glow with bioluminescence, its movement hypnotic and otherworldly. Ilara and Zack watched in silent awe, their hearts racing with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Little did they know, this was just the beginning of their struggle for survival on this deadly, beautiful planet. The real challenges and wonders were yet to come. First contact. The alien entity glided to a stop about 50 meters from the crashed shuttle. In the dim light of dusk, its bioluminescent glow pulsed rhythmically, casting an eerie blue sheen across the undulating landscape. Dr. Ilara Chen and Zack watched with bated breath, their suited forms pressed against the shuttle's cracked view screen. "It's beautiful," Ilara whispered, her scientific mind already cataloging details. The creature appeared to be a collection of tentacle-like appendages, all connected to a central mass that hovered slightly above the ground. Each tentacle moved independently, yet in perfect harmony with the others. Zack's voice was tense. "Beautiful, sure, but is it friendly?" As if in response to his question, the alien began to change. Its tentacles rearranged themselves, forming intricate patterns that shifted and morphed with fluid grace. It reminded Ilara of the light shows back on Earth, where drones would create elaborate designs in the night sky. "It's communicating," Ilara realized, her excitement overriding her caution. "Or at least trying to." "How can you be sure?" Zack asked skeptically. Ilara pointed to the patterns. "Look at the repetition, the deliberate changes. It's too ordered to be random. This is a language. We just need to figure out how to understand it." Before Zack could respond, a new sound filled the air. It was unlike anything they had ever heard before. A haunting melody that seemed to resonate not just in their ears, but in their very bones. The alien's tentacles vibrated in sync with the sound, creating visual accompaniment to the auditory display. "Okay," Zack admitted, "that's definitely communication." Ilara's mind raced. How could they respond? They had nothing that could replicate the alien's light show or musical abilities. Then, an idea struck her. "The emergency beacon," she said, rushing to retrieve the device from their supplies. "We can use its lights to signal back." Working quickly, Ilara jury-rigged the beacon to respond to manual input. With Zack's help, she carried it to the shuttle's airlock. "Ready?" she asked, her hand on the door release. Zack swallowed hard but nodded. "As I'll ever be." The airlock hissed open, and they stepped out onto the spongy ground. The alien creature's song intensified, its tentacles weaving even more complex patterns in the air. Ilara raised the beacon and began to flash it in a simple pattern, on, off. Universal across human cultures, it was the most basic way she could think to say, "We see you, we hear you." The effect was immediate. The alien song changed pitch, and its light patterns shifted to mimic Ilara's flashing. Encouraged, she tried more complex sequences, long, short, long, mirroring Morse code. For what felt like hours, they engaged in this rudimentary exchange. The alien proved to be a quick study, soon matching and even anticipating Ilara's patterns. As they talked, the creature inched closer, its curiosity seemingly matching their own. Ilara considered for a moment. Every scientific protocol warned against such close contact without proper quarantine procedures. But they were far beyond the realm of standard practices. If they were going to survive on this planet, they needed to take risks. No, she decided. Let's see what happens. The alien extended one of its tentacles towards them, moving slowly as if careful not to startle them. Ilara reached out her own hand, encased in the protective suit. For a heartbeat, human and alien observed each other, poised on the brink of true first contact. Then, gently, the tentacle brushed against Ilara's gloved hand. The world exploded into color and sensation. Ilara gasped, overwhelmed by a flood of images and feelings that weren't her own. She saw the planet from high above, felt the rhythm of its seasons, experienced the joy of drinking in the acidic rain. More than that, she felt a sense of welcome, of curiosity, of excitement at meeting something new. As quickly as it began, the connection broke. Ilara staggered, steadied by Zach's supportive grip. "Doc, are you okay? What happened?" Ilara blinked, trying to process the experience. It showed me things, shared them somehow. I think it was saying hello." The alien song had changed again, becoming softer, almost crooning. Its tentacles wove a gentle pattern in the air, and Ilara got the distinct impression it was concerned for her well-being. "I'm all right," she said aloud, smiling at the creature. On a hunch, she placed her hand over her heart, a universal human gesture of sincerity. The alien's tentacles rippled in response, mimicking the motion. Zach looked between Ilara and the alien, his earlier fear replaced by wonder. "So, we made first contact. What now?" It was a good question. They were still stranded, still in danger. But now, it seemed, they might have an ally. "Now," Ilara said, her mind already formulating plans, "we learn. We need to figure out how to communicate more effectively. Learn about this planet, its dangers, and its resources." As if understanding her intent, the alien began to move away, then paused, one tentacle gesturing in a clear follow-me motion. Ilara and Zach exchanged glances. The smart move would be to stay with the shuttle, their only source of supplies and shelter. But the scientist in Ilara couldn't resist the opportunity to explore, to learn. "We follow," she decided. "But we stay alert, and we don't go too far from the shuttle." They set off across the undulating landscape, the alien gliding smoothly ahead, while they struggled to keep their footing on the constantly shifting ground. As they walked, Ilara's mind whirled with questions. How did the alien communicate through touch? Was it some form of telepathy, or a more physical transfer of electrical impulses? And what else might they learn from this incredible being? Their journey took them to the base of one of the towering plant-like structures they had seen earlier. Up close, it was even more impressive, a twisting spire of iridescent material that pulsed with life. The alien gestured towards it with several tentacles, then pressed one appendage against its surface. Immediately, the structure began to change. It split open, revealing a hollow interior. The alien glided inside, then turned, clearly inviting them to follow. "It's showing us shelter," Ilara realized. "A safer alternative to our damaged shuttle." Zach eyed the opening warily. "Are we sure it's safe? This whole planet has been trying to kill us so far." Ilara understood his hesitation, but her excitement won out. "We have to take some risks if we're going to survive here. Come on." They ducked into the structure, which sealed seamlessly behind them. Inside, it was surprisingly spacious, with walls that seemed to glow softly, providing gentle illumination. The ground was firmer here, more stable than the spongy surface outside. The alien began another light and sound display, more complex than before. As Ilara watched, she began to discern patterns, repetitions that seemed meaningful. "I think it's trying to teach us," she said, her voice filled with awe. "Its language, or at least the basics of it." For hours, they engaged in an interstellar language lesson. The alien was patient, repeating patterns until Ilara and Zach could recreate them with their beacon and crude vocalizations. Slowly, painstakingly, they began to grasp fundamental concepts. danger, safety, food, water. As they learned, the alien guided them in exploring their new shelter. It showed them how to activate different sections, revealing areas that seemed designed for rest, nourishment, and even waste disposal. Everything was organic, responsive to touch and thought in a way that blurred the line between technology and biology. "This is incredible," Zack marveled, his earlier skepticism forgotten. "It's like the whole planet is one big living organism. And these aliens, they're not just part of it. They can control it, shape it." Ilara nodded, her mind racing with the implications. "Which means we're not just dealing with one alien, but an entire ecosystem that's at least partially sentient. The possibilities for research, for advancing our understanding of life itself." She trailed off, realizing that their alien host was watching them intently. It raised a tentacle, pointing first at them, then at itself, then making the sweeping gesture that seemed to encompass the whole planet. The meaning was clear, even with their limited grasp of the alien's language. Together, Ilara said softly, "It's offering to help us, to teach us how to survive here." Zack's expression was a mix of excitement and trepidation. "That's great, but what does it want in return?" "There's always a catch, isn't there?" Before Ilara could respond, the alien song changed, becoming urgent. Its tentacles wove a pattern they had learned earlier, the symbol for danger. What's wrong?" Ilara asked, instinctively moving closer to Zack. The alien's tentacles whipped through the air, creating a complex series of light patterns. Ilara struggled to follow, catching fragments of meaning. Sickness, spreading, help needed. A chill ran down her spine as understanding dawned. "There's some kind of disease," she translated for Zack's benefit. "It's affecting the planet, or at least parts of it. And I think it's asking for our help." Zack's eyes widened. "Our help? We can barely survive here ourselves. How are we supposed to cure an alien disease on a planet we know nothing about?" Ilara felt the weight of the challenge before them, but also a surge of determination. This is why she had become a doctor, why she had volunteered for this deep space mission. To push the boundaries of medical science, to help where no one had helped before. "We'll find a way," she said, her voice firm. "We have to. Our survival might depend on it." As if sensing her resolve, the alien song softened, becoming almost melodic. Its tentacles formed a new pattern, one they hadn't seen before, but its meaning was unmistakable. Hope. Ilara squared her shoulders, her mind already racing with possibilities. They had made first contact, begun to learn an alien language, and discovered a symbiotic relationship between planet and inhabitants. Now they faced their greatest challenge yet, a medical mystery that threatened not just their own lives, but potentially an entire world. As the aliens' hopeful song filled their organic shelter, Ilara knew that the real test of their ingenuity, their resilience, and their humanity was just beginning. Whatever came next would push them to their limits. And beyond. Outbreak Crisis, the alien's mournful song echoed through the organic shelter, its bioluminescent tentacles painting a grim picture of a planet in peril. Dr. Ilara Chin's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of information they had gleaned from their rudimentary communication. "Okay," she said, turning to Zack. "Let's break this down. We got some kind of disease spreading across the planet. It's affecting the ecosystem. The aliens? Both." Zack frowned, his forehead creasing in concentration. "From what I can gather, it's both. Remember how the aliens showed us that everything here is connected? If one part gets sick, the whole system suffers," Ilara finished, nodding grimly. "We need more information, and we need it fast." She turned back to their alien host, raising the jury-rigged beacon. Slowly, carefully, she flashed a series of patterns they had learned earlier. The symbols for show and sickness. The alien's song changed pitch, becoming somehow both mournful and eager. Its tentacles began to weave intricate patterns in the air, faster than before. Ilara and Zack watched intently, struggling to keep up with the rapid-fire communication. It's showing us symptoms. Ilara translated, her voice tight with concentration. The ground is losing its responsiveness. The plant structures are withering. And the aliens themselves, they're losing their ability to connect with the planet. Zach's eyes widened. That's not just an illness. It's an existential threat to their entire way of life. Before Ilara could respond, the aliens' tentacles shot out, gently but insistently tugging at their environmental suits. The meaning was clear. It wanted them to follow. Should we? Zach asked, hesitation evident in his voice. Ilara nodded firmly. We have to. We can't help if we don't understand what we're dealing with. They allowed the alien to guide them out of the shelter and back onto the shifting landscape. As they walked, Ilara noticed subtle changes in their surroundings. The ground seemed less responsive, its movements sluggish and erratic. The towering plant structures drooped, their vibrant colors dulled. Their alien guide led them to a clearing where several of its kind had gathered. The scene was heart-wrenching. Some of the aliens lay motionless on the ground, their bioluminescence flickering weakly. Others moved sluggishly, their tentacles tangled and uncoordinated. It's affecting their motor control, Ilara observed, her doctor's instincts kicking in. And look, the patterns of light on their bodies. They're disrupted, chaotic. Zach nodded, his earlier fear replaced by deep concern. It's like their whole communication system is breaking down. But how can we help? We don't have any equipment, any medicines. Ilara's mind raced. They were facing an alien disease on an alien planet with nothing but the contents of their environmental suits and a basic medkit. It was an impossible situation. But then again, wasn't that what she had trained for? To face the unknown, to push the boundaries of medical science. We start with the basics, she said, her voice filled with determination. Observation, data collection, hypothesis formation. We may not have our lab equipment, but we have our minds. And we have a whole planet of potential resources at our disposal. Their alien guide, sensing their resolve, began to sing again. This time, the melody was tinged with hope. Its tentacles wove a new pattern, one that Ilara interpreted as together. Over the next several hours, Ilara and Zach worked tirelessly to gather as much information as they could. They took samples of the sickened ground, collected data on the aliens' light patterns and movements, and attempted to map the spread of the disease across the area. As night fell, they retreated to their shelter, their minds whirling with all they had learned. Ilara spread out their findings, hastily scribbled notes, crude drawings, and samples stored in whatever containers they could improvise. Okay, she said, rubbing her tired eyes. What do we know? Zach consulted his notes. The disease seems to be spreading from the ground up. It starts by affecting the responsiveness of the surface, then moves to the plant structures, and finally to the aliens themselves. Ilara nodded. And it's disrupting the symbiotic relationship between the aliens and their environment. They're losing their ability to communicate, to shape their surroundings. But why? Zach asked, frustration evident in his voice. What's causing it? A virus, bacteria, some kind of alien parasite. Ilara shook her head. We don't have the equipment to know for sure. But, she trailed off, a thought forming. But what? Zach prompted. What if it's not a traditional disease at all? Ilara mused. This entire planet operates on principles we barely understand. The connection between the aliens and their environment. It's almost like a biological internet. What if this is more like a computer virus than a biological one? Zach's eyes widened. A glitch in the system. But how would that even work? Before Ilara could respond, an alarm blared from their environmental suits. They checked the readouts, their hearts sinking. Oxygen levels are dropping, Zach reported, his voice tight. We've got maybe 12 hours of breathable air left. Ilara felt a wave of panic threatening to overwhelm her. They were running out of time, not just for the aliens, but for themselves. Without a solution, they would suffocate on this beautiful, deadly world. "Okay," she said, forcing calm into her voice. "New plan. We need to find a way to replenish our oxygen supply and cure this planet-wide disease, preferably in the next 12 hours. Zack let out a humorless laugh. "No pressure, right? Just save ourselves and an entire alien civilization before breakfast." Despite the dire situation, Ilara felt a smile tugging at her lips. "Hey, we're explorers. We live for the impossible." Their alien host, sensing their distress, approached. Its song was soft, almost comforting. With gentle movements, it guided them to a new section of the shelter, one they hadn't explored before. As they entered, Ilara gasped. The room was filled with what looked like large, transparent bubbles. Inside each bubble, miniature ecosystems thrived. Perfect, unblemished versions of the landscape outside. "Are these backups?" Zack asked, wonder in his voice. Ilara's mind raced with possibilities. "Not just backups. Test environments. We can use these to experiment, to test theories without risking the larger ecosystem." For the first time since crash landing on this alien world, Ilara felt a genuine surge of hope. They had a chance, slim, perhaps, but real. "All right," she said, her voice filled with newfound determination. "Let's get to work. We've got a planet to save." Over the next few hours, Ilara and Zack worked feverishly, using the miniature ecosystems to test various hypotheses. They introduced samples from the infected areas, watched how the disease spread, and tried different interventions. As their oxygen supplies dwindled, they made a breakthrough. By introducing a specific frequency of sound waves, mimicking the healthy alien song, they were able to disrupt the spread of the glitch and restore normal function to the miniature ecosystem. "It's working," Zack exclaimed, watching as the sickened ground in the test bubble regained its responsiveness. Ilara nodded, her excitement tempered by caution. "In this controlled environment, yes, but scaling it up to the entire planet, that's a whole different challenge." Their alien host, who had been watching their experiments intently, suddenly burst into song. Its tentacles wove complex patterns in the air, faster than they had ever seen before. "What's it saying?" Zack asked, struggling to follow. Ilara's eyes widened as understanding dawned. It's offering to help. The aliens, they can amplify and transmit the healing frequency across the planet. They just needed to know what sound to make." Hope surged through her. It wasn't just a solution for the planet. It might be their salvation too. If they could heal the ecosystem, they might find a way to generate breathable air. But as she turned to share her excitement with Zack, she saw him slump to the ground, his breathing labored. "Zack!" she cried, rushing to his side. The oxygen readout on his suit was blinking red, critically low. Ilara's heart raced. They were out of time. With trembling hands, she removed her own helmet, taking a deep breath of the alien atmosphere. It burned her lungs, made her dizzy, but she remained conscious. She turned to their alien host, her eyes pleading. "We need to do this now. For Zack. For your people. For this entire world. Are you ready?" The alien song rose in a crescendo, its light patterns blazing with determination. Around them, other aliens began to join in, their voices and lights harmonizing in a spectacular display. Ilara closed her eyes, focusing all her mental energy on the healing frequency they had discovered. As the alien song washed over her, she felt a connection forming, not just with their hosts, but with the planet itself. The ground beneath her feet began to pulse with renewed vigor, the air shimmered with energy, and as the healing song spread across the planet, Ilara felt her own breathing ease, the burning in her lungs subsiding. They had done it. Against all odds, they had found a way to save themselves and an entire alien world. As Zack stirred beside her, his color returning, Ilara allowed herself a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. They were alive. They had made a difference on a cosmic scale. But as the initial euphoria faded, a sobering thought occurred to her. They were still stranded on an alien planet, with no way to contact Earth. Their greatest challenge had been overcome, but their struggle for survival was far from over. The adventure, it seemed, was just beginning. Triumph and new horizons. In the days following their miraculous healing of the planet, Dr. Ilara Chen and Zach found themselves in a transformed world. The once sickly landscape now pulsed with vibrant life, its colors more brilliant than ever. The aliens moved with renewed vigor, their songs filling the air with joyous melodies. But for the two human castaways, a bittersweet reality set in. They were alive, yes, and had accomplished something truly extraordinary. Yet they remained stranded on an alien world, with no way to contact Earth or their research station. "We did it, Doc," Zach said one evening as they sat outside their organic shelter, watching the planet's twin moons rise. "We saved an entire world. So why do I still feel so?" As the ship landed and the delegation emerged, Ilara stepped forward. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind countless times, trying to find the right words to bridge the gap between worlds. "Welcome," she said, her voice steady despite her pounding heart, "to a new chapter in the history of both our peoples." The human diplomats looked from Ilara to the assembled aliens, their expressions a mix of awe and trepidation. For a moment, silence reigned. Then, one of the aliens floated forward. Its tentacles wove a complex pattern in the air, accompanied by a haunting melody. To the newcomers, it must have seemed incomprehensible, but Ilara understood. With a smile, she translated. "They say, together, we will reach the stars." As humans and aliens began their first tentative interactions, Ilara felt a profound sense of accomplishment wash over her. They had done more than just survive on this deadly planet. They had opened the door to a future of collaboration, discovery, and shared knowledge on a cosmic scale. The journey ahead would be challenging, filled with cultural misunderstandings, technological hurdles, and the ever-present risk of conflict. But as Ilara watched the two species begin to communicate, she knew that the potential rewards far outweighed the risks. They had struggled, they had persevered, and now they stood on the brink of a new era for both civilizations. Whatever came next, Ilara knew that her greatest adventure, and humanity's, was just beginning. As the purple sun set on this alien world, casting long shadows across the undulating landscape, Ilara allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. From a desperate crash landing to saving an entire planet, from isolation to bridge building between species, it had been a journey beyond her wildest dreams. She glanced at Zach, who caught her eye and grinned. They had come here as scientists and explorers. They would leave as something far greater, pioneers of a new age of galactic cooperation. The space doctor's struggle for survival had transformed into a triumph of the human spirit, paving the way for a future limited only by the stars themselves.